Hi. Today we're going to be talking about the what at last count was the 15,000 strong invasion force, and there's no nicer way to put it. It's basically a I think what would be, I don't know if it's a platoon or a battalion, but basically over 10,000 Hondurans, Honduran nationals, along with other Central American presu- um, and presumably foreigners. There have even been rumors that they have Bengalis and Middle Eastern and Haitian nationals inside, and that's what usually happens. People don't realize when the border patrol apprehends what they call OTMs, other than Mexicans. It's not just Central American quote unquote migrants. They also usually find Middle Easterners, people carrying copies of the Koran, um, a whole host of other people from third world countries who are using the same smuggling routes to get into the U.S. So you have 15,000, mostly Honduran, but also other Central Americans and other people from third world countries on the march, in planning to invade the United States, and they've already they didn't receive any resistance from the Central American militaries or police. They were just allowed to leave, and the Mexicans, as another YouTuber put up a very half-assed uh, barrier to them. They did nothing, and now the Mexicans, the country that we prop up, that we just negotiated a very advantageous trade deal with, they're acting as valets essentially for these invaders. And that's what they are. This is People need to be realistic about this. This is an invasion force that is not has no goodwill towards us. And one of the questions that's asked about this is, because you hear that this is time to coincide with the elections, and it is to a great extent. This is an October surprise. That shouldn't be much of a surprise, to be honest. And you hear the question, how could this conceivably benefit the Democrats? You have thousands of virulently anti-American. You've seen the pictures of these people burning the American flag, uh, painting a swastika on the American flag, and then setting it alight, uh, giving literally giving the middle finger to the cameras, which is a figurative uh, gesture of hatred towards the country they want to accept them, to take them in. Um, and you have interviews, you have the sympathetic media, the media that wants this group of just violent, hateful, disgusting, despicable people. Um, the news media, the media is their news service, basically. And excuse me. And you have the rational question from people: how on earth does this benefit the Democrats? If this is done to coincide with the election, how does having this group of uneducated, unskilled, uh, violent, hateful, virulently anti-American people force their way into the United States, how does this benefit the Democrats who are running in the Senate in very red states and want to at least be perceived as patriotic, at least doing something to preserve the United States or to uphold American values, even though, as James O'Keefe exposed through his undercover investigative work, this is usually a ruse. These are radical far left Democrats. But how on earth does this benefit the Democrats politically? If anything, a logical, rational person would look at this and say, this is going to benefit Trump and the Republicans less than a month out from a critical mid off-year election. And it's a very logical conclusion. I mean, you have people, to the extent they have any religion, you have some of them saying that Trump is the Antichrist and he's going to hell. To the extent they're any religion, they're a very bastardized form of Roman Catholicism. Why would evangelical voters, not who are already very conservative on immigration issues, welcome this? Or even people who are secular but who are patriotic, why would they think why would they be more likely to vote for Democrats who are already in support of full-blown amnesty, have already criticized Donald Trump's very reasonable Muslim ban? I'm sorry, his travel ban of people from predominantly Muslim nations and some other non-Muslim nations. Why would they be more likely to support Democrats who are already associated with the type of lawlessness that we're seeing unfold south of the border? And that's a very logical question. And the answer is they're not. But and this is the tricky part. And I think the people behind the migrant invasion, this reenactment of Camp of the Saints in real life, they're cognizant of this, but they're cognizant of the one way that this could hurt Trump and hurt the Republicans running for office. And that is if the president buckles, if he yields to this group of invaders and their allies, their benefactors who are pushing them, whether that's Sin Fronteras, this open borders, radical, ostensibly nonprofit group, or if it's George Soros behind the scenes orchestrating this. The only way that this can hurt Republicans is if Donald Trump decides not to turn them back at the border. And the historical analog for this is the decision by President Nixon. And this is explored in a very incisive, wonderful, personal history of the Nixon administration by Pat Buchanan, called Nixon's White House Wars. Excuse me. Where Pat Buchanan describes his portfolio was a variety of issues. One of them was post-Brown integration, and one of the tragic decisions after the Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education, was the way busing was implemented. Instead of an organic, the way integration was implemented, instead of an organic approach of working collectively with individuals on the ground, parents and teachers, and to a certain extent, local officials. These judicial edicts were issued, which forced people to force students to be bused hundreds of miles in some cases to other schools, and it was a complete and utter disaster. And Buchanan knew that if Nixon was on the side of Americans who knew that education was a local decision, and that parents and local people should be in charge of this very important, essential decision. And he knew if Nixon stood up to these judges, he would be rewarded by the American public. So there was no way that Nixon could lose this fight unless he yielded to judicial tyranny. And that's what happened. So that is the analogy that I would use in this context. If Trump buckles, I mean, and there's already signs that he might. Hopefully he won't, but there's already signs. The aggressive statement saying this needs to be stopped and these people are criminals are undergirded by this promise to do more to help Central America and prevent. There's already signs that he's yielding slowly but inexorably, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But there's already a historical parallel to that. So that's what they're counting on, even though they realize this is a kamikaze mission, that this may destroy the Democratic Party in the upcoming elections. There's that one shot. It's a high risk, but a high yield. It's high risk, but high yield. It's kind of like the bets that Peter Thiel makes, one of President Trump's backers, who spoke at the Republican convention and who put Gawker out of business. He bet that that he could force Gawker, which looked invincible, to stop, and it was very. The odds were very high that he would not succeed, but he was willing to risk it, and I think that's what you have here. You have what looks to the outside world as just a kamikaze mission might actually be the ace in the hole for Democrats, because if they can get Donald Trump to yield, that will depress the Republican vote and just force conservatives to just sit on their hands and stay home. And that's what they're counting on. And we'll see if that very risky bet is successful in the weeks